This is Freshly Pressed. We're looking at the news stories making the headlines across the country. And as always, we'd love for you to be a part of the conversation. Let us know what your thoughts are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 981. You can also tweet at Smooth981, and we're also streaming live on our YouTube channel, so you can catch the live stream. It's Smooth981 on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe as well. The analysts are in this morning. It's AB Bozimo and Mr. C. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Great to be here. Good morning, Mr. C, and good morning to all the wonderful listeners. Happy Monday, everybody.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Omas. Good morning, lady. Good morning, Amos.
All right, let's get into it. The first headline comes from Vanguard. National grid fully restored after collapse, and this is according to the transmission company of Nigeria. Mr. C?
Thank you, Zibby. So on Saturday, once again, the national grid, went off. Now this is the fourth collapse this year. So the first collapse was in February. The second collapse was in March. The third collapse was in April, and then now July. Now, the TCN, which is the operator of the transmission system, has said what happened on Saturday was a partial collapse and not a total collapse. And when the TCN records, there have been 3 partial collapses and 1 total collapse this year. Now, 1 collapse, partial or total, is too many. And we're speaking about 4 different incidents. Now, on Saturday, there was no power. So what happened was, according to the TCN, 3 units from the generating station went off, and it caused some cyclical disruption. Now, it took the TCN more than 6 hours to remedy or fix a partial disruption. I'm putting them. Now, the bigger question is this: why are we still listening to experiencing system collapses? With the deregulation of the power industry sector and the movement of electricity from the exclusive list to the concurrent list, one would have thought that these sort of stories would be folk tales now or tales from the crypt of history. But we're still dealing with them, and each state have been encouraged to set up their own electricity markets and regulate the generation, transmission, and distribution of power in their states. Now, a number of states have already done this. I know Abia, Lagos, Imo, I think Rivers, and some other states have already set up their local electricity markets. Now, from a security perspective, it is totally wrong, and it should not be allowed to continue that the country's entire power goes out at the same time. So, how do we fix this? We should move away from monogrid. That anytime it's attacked, it goes down. Because let's not forget, we've been dealing with non-state actors in the northeastern corridors, the northwestern corridors of Nigeria for the past 12, 13 years. We cannot continue this way. And it's a clarion call to work to all stakeholders. Maybe divide each state should generate its own power. Then this business of a national grid should be reserved power that is not being used by any of the states. Now, there's no saying that power is one of the reasons why a lot of multinational companies have left Nigeria within the last 2 to 3 years. And it's a reason why a lot of companies within the manufacturing space are struggling. We need to fix this. We need to get it right. And this is without prejudice to the fact that the word that clear that once again times have been increased, but that's a story for another day. This business of great collapses has to stop. But the question is, do we have what it takes in terms of funding, in terms of equipment, in terms of a direction, and the required political will to get that done?
Thank you, Mr. C. Let's go over to something related to the power. Maybe, yes, you have to connect this. Also, it's related to your story. So let's quickly, so let's go over to the Punch newspaper where the headline leads us here. No, that isn't. Okay, let's let you speak on this.
First of all, I want to talk about the good news. One thing about this whole story is that we are actually getting reports at times volume of power and communication from the transmission company of Nigeria about what happened. The bad news there is that many of us did not know that there was a national power grid collapse, because even when in the best of times, there's uncertain power. The last thing I'll say is that we need to turn a mirror on our state governors. I personally see absolutely no reason why the South state governors as a region have not decided to create power utopia in the area. Let's leave other parts. We have these 6 fantastic political zones that they use in sharing things. How can they not sit down and share power to themselves? Because if there's one part of the country, and I believe every part of the country that can prioritize can make power available, but if there's one part of the country that gets enough money, the South zone at this point should be power independent. So national grid, I'm ready to go on a rant about how we don't have power, but that's not the issue. The law has been changed. What are the various governors doing? Here in Rivers State, we're having quarrels that don't have the people at the center of the quarrel. We're having grid collapse. This national grid, again, is anachronistic. Why don't we have 6 sub-regional grids so that each of those fabulous political zones takes power independence as a thing to be done over 4 or 8 years? Instead, you are deposing emirs here, quarreling with governors there. For goodness sake, can we get real and get ready to be a nation with hope? So we had a grid collapse. Who knew? That's the question I always ask. Who knew?
Anyway, let's get on to this next paper, the Nation newspaper. But we might return to power generation in a bit. That will be with Mr. C in a while. But let's get on to politics and economics of the sub-region. The Nation newspaper talks about ECOWAS authority re-electing President Tinubu as the chairman for a second term.
Tinubu was elected as the chairman. I guess we'll say congrats, because when he wasn't the chairman, okay, the core of the story is that he has made a couple of presidents envoys to speak to those countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, that pulled out of ECOWAS. And I'll say this, when they were part of ECOWAS, was that not the time when France was expropriating their resources and giving them the worst power statistics in the world? Niger, for instance. They have said they, at least according to them, have seen no specific value in being part of ECOWAS. I think it's imperative for ECOWAS to prove its value. Sitting as a Nigerian in Nigeria, what value is ECOWAS doing for us who are still part of ECOWAS? Like that map said on a cheeky note, there is ECOWAS and ECOWIS, excluding those countries. Right now, you have to ask them, in their countries, they're actually having protests of support for some, I think it's in Burkina Faso, the one where the man is always wearing a bulletproof vest while he's going around. I've seen videos where they're investing in agricultural equipment with which to do infrastructure, as opposed to a country like Nigeria, where we're investing in bulletproof cars and prayers to emails and other such tomfoolery when we should be making a country better. So yes, he's been made the president of ECOWAS. Congratulations to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Wonderful. Good for his CV. He's never looking for another job anyway. But the point is, what value is he in ECOWAS doing? Is ECOWAS doing in the lives of West Africans? And how can he make those 3 countries, the recent pullouts of ECOWAS, feel the need to rejoin? We'll see. They have created some envoys. Let's go and see whether they can make a case for anybody. The concept of ECOWAS has value. Let me be careful to say, because a larger economic market, if Nigeria were playing properly, we may have been a dominant force across the entire West Africa. But instead, we're here talking about no light, grid, power failure, and all that. So we don't even have a sound. I read some statistics just today. While we are the country with the largest remittance from abroad, what are we doing with those remittances? 23 billion in US dollars. It's 5% or so of our GDP, but is it being converted to value in the lives of the people? So he's been made the new president of the new head of ECOWAS. Congratulations to him. For me, lack of gari, rice, beans, tomato, water, and coal that I'm experiencing right now, it is of absolutely no significance whatsoever to me.
Now, looking at this, the three states, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and knowing that they also share what you call a common denominator, that's insecurity runs across these three, and then it also runs to us. So you might also want to look at it from that angle that this is also something the president might also be the reason why there is need to bring them back into the fold, better and stronger together.
Again, I say there's value in both economic, social, political, cultural cooperation. There is nothing wrong with it. But I'm saying ECOWAS, perhaps before now, in my view, has not lived up to its promise. And I don't know whether a president who appears beleaguered at home, and sometimes, frankly, in my opinion, entirely out of his depth in handling the issues in his own country, is the person to be at the top of ECOWAS, which is already tottering because of these pullouts. But that said, every effort can and should be made to try and strengthen the regional body with clear statements about what it should be trying to do to benefit the lives of ordinary millions of citizens across the sub-region. Being the head of ECOWAS is a nice role, but how is it translating into the benefit of lives of those formerly 13 or so countries across the region? These are the questions that have to be analyzed, asked, and answered. And then you might find that ECOWAS is something that those three countries would say, among other things, security could enhance. Because the reason why that man keeps wearing a bulletproof vest, apart from the fact that he took over in a coup and knows he's therefore a subject of a coup, is that there is insecurity around the area.
Mr. C, just jumping on this, do you think President Bola Tinubu deserves a second term as the chair of ECOWAS, judging from the last 1 year?
Okay, thank you, Omas. So, if we were to judge strictly based on the last year, I'm struggling to discover what it is he actually achieved in his first year as ECOWAS chair. And maybe I need to do some research on this, but off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. Maybe it's also possible nobody wanted to be ECOWAS chair. Now, speaking about the three states, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, they formed a new union at the Association of Sahel States, and they said quite clearly that ECOWAS did not do enough from a military perspective with regards to the jihadists who are tormenting that region. So one would hope that in talks with these guys, ECOWAS would articulate a clear military and political strategy, even possibly add an economic twist that will deal with this jihadist insurgency in that region and beyond. Now, what was Nigeria's gain from his first year as ECOWAS chair? I'm really struggling to identify anything. Let's hope and pray for his sake and for the benefit of millions of Nigerians that the second is a lot better.
All right, let's look at a few messages coming through. Don't forget, you can send yours as well, 0809 440 981. JP says, ECOWAS isn't doing well. The question isn't bringing back those who left, but ensuring value for those still in it. Babatunde says, we'll always have collapse of power grids, whether partial or complete, because the appointments into that ministry was done without the consideration of knowledge base in that sector. Get people who know the job to do it. And this one is from Ajayi, and he says, it baffles me that we're still talking of national grid collapse, even after the electricity sector has been decentralized. It's even more embarrassing that this grid continues to collapse, despite the meager 4,000 megawatts being generated. Let every state generate and supply electricity to their people.
And we've got a following somewhere on YouTube there, where someone on YouTube also joining in, Sifre Ashe says, I totally agree with AB. What is the value of ECOWAS? Well, it's just another talk shop and on dining cemetery, not even borderless travel, zero. That's what Sifre Ashe can tell us there. So let's return to.
All right, next headline comes from Punch. Still on matters relating to power and insecurity. Soldiers foil terror attack on power installation in Yobe.
Okay, thank you, Zibby. So, good news. On Saturday, troops of the Nigerian army found a fresh attack on power installations in Yobe State. So we need to understand where we're coming from. On the 28th of December, three transmission towers, T193, T194, and T195, were destroyed by non-state terrorists using improvised explosive devices. These towers were subsequently rebuilt, and in June 2024, two towers, T193 and T194, again were destroyed by non-state terrorists in Borno State. Now, last weekend on Saturday, they decided to try and attack again, and the Nigerian army followed their attempts to destroy those power installations. Now, we can't thank the gallant soldiers of the Nigerian army enough, and this has now informed calls for the establishment of a special unit of trained security operatives who will be turned Power Rangers, not the cartoons, but Power Rangers. Now, why has this become necessary? We've already spoken about the challenges Nigeria's power industry is going through with the frequent system collapses. We cannot add terrorist attacks to the mix because it's already a volatile situation. Now, my question to the authorities is this: the concept of a unit of Power Rangers on paper is good. However, how many men are you going to get? How are you going to pay them? Where's the equipment they will need to guard these installations? In terms of communication, what devices, what gadgets will you give? Now, we mustn't forget that communication across Nigeria is very good when you're in major cities. Leave the major cities into the rural areas, into the hinterland, communication becomes a big stretch. Do we have a communication network in place that can bring rallying these guys and they can put together resources? Also, is there a portal or a niche whereby residents, concerned residents or neighbors who can identify suspicious movement can call in or send in that information, and then the Power Rangers or the soldiers or whoever is on the ground or whichever boots are on the ground can quickly mobilize to the site and de-escalate the situation? So these are many, many questions. I hope the Minister for Power is liaising with the Chief of Defense Staff, is liaising with the Minister of Defense, is liaising with the National Security Advisor, because this is also a national security issue. And it calls for collaboration and cooperation amongst the various government ministries and security agencies.
All right, let's go over now to AB. AB, at times like this, where food and tomato you've raised at some point in time as a major source of concern for you, it seems at least one person is showing the way of how this can be done properly. And going by the next headline, the Authority newspaper runs with this headline: Food Security. First Lady Tinubu unveils vegetable garden in Aso Rock. Good use of the space in that State's house?
First of all, on the last story that Mr. C handled perfectly, I just want to say kudos for the Army. Also, I like the example of citizen stroke security service collaboration, which led to that discovery. And down with the terrorists. Anything that can be done to terminate those terrorists deserves an applause from me. Now, onto this food security. The First Lady has unveiled a vegetable garden in Aso Rock. Another round of applause. So, she's not that much older than me. And I've told the story right here on this station where, when I was a child, around the Operation Feed the Nation time that Obasanjo did back then, I too planted a garden. I would argue that in most households that have some land in the premises, most families have one or two of these herbs and so on. I don't think the issue of going back to the garden is actually a thing. They actually have a competition going on right now where they will have people doing a 30-second video, sending it to a certain website, and then there's a potential for a 25 million naira winning prize. You know, I think it's actually possible to save money. If you ask me, an incentive of even 500,000 naira spread out across 36 states and the federal capital would cost only 18.5 million naira. And that is more than enough incentive for people to contest. I know it's like an incentive to make it sweet, to make it fun. She's planting a number of things that we commonly use: spinach, water leaf, bitter leaf, ewedu, lemongrass, scent leaf, and okra. Great. I don't know whether planting that will reduce the food bill we saw in the budget of Nigeria's, when the budget for Aso Rock passed by Nigeria. But the concept is great. I don't believe people are not using their garden space. This also comes to the point that in many modern developments, people cover the entire place with interlocking stones or cement. So even in our premises, we must do better landscaping and permit people to have areas where you can have either economic or food crops like this, or just nice, pleasant landscaping. We need to even take a look at our planning standards. Most authorities say you must have a certain percentage reserve, but everybody just covers things with interlocking stones because they don't want to maintain it. She's not saying anything new, is all I'm saying. People are already in the garden. Let's now go to the larger area of security when it comes to agriculture. People don't want to go to the farm to die. So before you tell people to go back to the farm, or how did she put it? Every home needs a garden. I agree. I totally agree. But and those gardens can enhance. But at the end of the day, there's an economic incentive for agriculture, and let us focus on the security or lack thereof that makes agriculture at the larger level less than stellar as it ought to be in a country as blessed as Nigeria is, with fertile soil, great weather, and hardy working people.
And not even that you were not even okay. Did you? How did I miss out? You looking at the content of the garden at some point? There is a weed there. There will be bitter leaf, water leaf, lemongrass, okra, and all of this. You see
yes,
how, and that's enough for the table of the first lady and the family. That's
absolutely. And she even said if it's big enough, she'll even give it to some of the other staff. Listen, it's a great initiative. It's a feel-good story. Okay. I don't know whether she gets her own fingers green, whether she has a green thumb or not, but as long as it's being catered under her guide and care, I love it. All I'm saying is that everybody's pretty much doing it rather, even if you weren't doing it before. Many people have started doing it, but it also calls to question how we plan our compounds. Many people's compounds have no earth area exposed. So it's something you should work with your designers and your architects and to make sure that you leave some land for planting one or two things. My mom would always go out of the backyard, go and pick one or two things, come in and make me child labor. I would have to cut them up. I was abused as a child. I should have been watching, but leave that aside. It was fun. It was nice. And when I was a child, I planted beans. And I loved the fact, actually, the fun in planting the beans was doing the rooting the water there. I was a small engineer. I was playing with water and mud. It wasn't about the beans, but it was fun.
All right, let's look at some messages coming through. Abbas says, sometimes we make smaller countries look larger than they truly are. Those countries that pulled out of ECOWAS have not changed in any bit, and there's so much they benefit from ECOWAS. The citizens of those countries will feel the heat more if ECOWAS tries to enforce the condition binding them. We need to speak more about the treaty. Joseph Menu says ECOWAS is a total failure to the extent that no one contested the position. No leader, even in the sub-region, bothers themselves of the position at all. It's just as if nothing is happening positively in Nigeria and likewise in the ECOWAS body itself. Those that left are doing better than those still under the umbrella. Are they doing better at the moment? Well, time will tell. Yinka Bolu says ECOWAS did not support military with respect to the jihadist madness in the Sahel. Okay, this is a question you guys asking. ECOWAS did not support the military with respect to the jihadist madness in the Sahel, question mark. I'm sorry, but how is that ECOWAS's problem? When they all aligned with France, they forgot. And what's their contribution to ECOMOG? As far as I'm concerned, Nigeria is ECOMOG, and I'm sorry we have our own issues at home on this whole grid collapse and all that. Let's get this in clear context. A truck rams into a power line and it's open season on the government. Yes, the grid collapsed, but it came back up that same day, I think. The grid collapse is akin to a circuit breaker operation, so it's not all bad. And Obi says, yeah, that's all we're good at, hope and pray. That's fine with a little prayer every now and then. Let's move on to the next headline. And this one comes from, I'm trying to get the newspaper that this comes from, actually.
Oh, that's Mr. C's. Now, not Mr. C's papers anyway, but I'm just saying that story is for Mr. C. So,
Okay. Lagos State government
the Punch.
Lagos State government partners Netherlands to tackle coastal erosion.
Okay, thank you, Zibby. This is a welcome initiative because coastal erosion is a menace that has plagued Lagos and other coastal states over the years. So now the Lagos State government is in talks with the Netherlands with regards to ensuring that we receive the requisite guidance, requisite materials, requisite technology to ensure that we can save what's left of the communities that have been hit by coastal erosion. And to this end, there was a delegation from the Netherlands led by the Consular General, and they expressed a willingness to cooperate in water management, coastal protection, and sustainable development projects that Lagos needs to deal with. Now, however, there's a cost to these things. Now, Lagos State government has in place groins, which are supposed to ensure that sediments are not further transported inland and the coastline is preserved. However, these groins do cost a lot of money. I did some quick research, and the typical cost of a linear foot for a groin, is between 4,000 to 5,000 US dollars. Now, the Lagos State government estimates that we will need at least 12 billion naira now to save the communities in the Ibejuleki area of the state that have been affected by coastal erosion. Now, and to save Lagos State's entire 80-kilometer coastline, we need about 1.2 trillion, which is about $750 million. So these are very interesting times, and this is where the Lagos State government can partner with private investors, just as they've done with the city being built beside adjacent to Victoria Island, to ensure that the coastline is preserved and protected. So early days, this is just a declaration of intent, and it's a good declaration, but let's see this being fruitfully executed and implemented.
I'd like to get AB's take on this one. AB, you being an architect and being able to link up, you understand the terrain of the Netherlands and the similarities with Lagos. So, and most of it because you've been an advocate of Lagos being the Lagos of Africa, not the Venice. So just walk us through this as we sum up.
You know, I think the Lagos State government could not find a better partner when it comes to managing water, managing coastlines, because the Netherlands is highly challenged. Think of the building in which you are. You are in a two-story building. The generality of the Netherlands is lower than the surrounding sea level with the height of your 6 meters below sea level. Yet, they're a thriving country with agriculture, all sorts and everything. And of course, so Lagos has a great partner. Now, that cost, I was just trying to find out, there's a coastline, 180 kilometers of coastline. In some other parts of the world, that coastline is one of the greatest assets. So it's not all bad if and when Lagos State government gets the secret sauce and converts that coastline into all it can be, including a beach paradise and all that. It will bring in the money you need to actually live. I once lived near Jakonde. I know what the flooding was doing to me then. I think it's even worse now. So if and when they started filling in, what's the name of that city near Victoria Island? It seemed as if it started eroding the areas further down. So there has to be some more environmental impact assessment to some of these magnificent projects they are planning in Lagos, so that Lagos can emerge and continue to be that economic powerhouse that it has been for years. Netherlands have the technology. What we need is the money, but money will come when the incentive is there. We have to, first of all, create a very welcoming economic environment. And people, just the way money has flown into the UAE, specifically Dubai, it can flow into Lagos. And again, all these states around the coast have the opportunity, so they must maximize it. I'll take Delta State. Delta State has 5 ports. Koko, Saple, Warri, there are about 5 ports there. Rivers has at least 2. It's time for these coastal states to make themselves also players in this business of coastal blue economy, if you will. But I think Lagos State government has a good thing, how to raise that money. Sometimes the money is there, but the priority again is making some politicians live lives of the rich and famous rather than making the entire economy greater.
I will sum up with messages now. Lagos is always problem solving in way that makes one hope APC is working. Rex from Surulere speaking there. And Don Kelvin says, keep an eye in Aso Rock budget for the feeding this year and next. If the so-called green initiative doesn't reflect largely, then it's an obvious waste of time, money, and just a photo op. That's what Don Kelvin says. And Wendy comes up saying, this gardening story is an annoying distraction. Face security and large-scale farming. That's how he sees.
There's nothing wrong with starting with what you have. Not everyone is going to be a large-scale farmer. I mean, some people are farming for their own substance. So if you have a little space in your house, you can even use flower pots. There's nothing wrong with that, really.
Beju comes up saying, I believe the option of vertical farming can also be explored if you do not have an exposed land. Cities like New York do it already. And then Omolabake says, well, Mr. Dolapo Shibaju, that's the what Mrs. he has to say then, is an avid gardener. She championed many gardening initiatives and revived the gardens in the villa without pomp and pageantry. So yes, laudable initiative, but I call this 25 million show self-serving. And Chubike comes up saying, the vast majority of Nigerians have no access to even 2 meters of land space to grain. And then we talked about vertical gardening a while ago, so Chubike, no excuse. And now, final message. Hi, and this is someone from Abuja. You are right. The planting staple foods was a thing in the 90s, but you need arable land to plant something, no matter how small. Developers and town planners have to be fingered. That's bring them in. That's just asterisk that word out and use this right word now. It says, for the death of this, they are to be blamed for the death of this family practice for concretizing our neighborhood. That's where we live it.
Thank you for your messages. Thanks for listening. And special thanks to our analysts, AB Bozimo and Mr. C for joining us this morning.
You guys have a great week ahead. Mr. C, hats off.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, AB. Everyone have a great, blessed week ahead.
Agree, disagree? Is there a way to find AB anywhere else?
At AB Bozimo on most platforms. I'm working on Twitter. They banned, they canceled my account. I think they took it over somehow, but that's okay. I'll get it back.
And AB, by the way, is EBI. I got a lot of messages saying AB. It's actually EBI.
Okay. EBI Bozimo, correct. Thank you.
All right, that is it for Freshly Pressed. Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.